Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, Mysterious Voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I've found in my travels. Today it is Poetry Thursday, so I wanted to talk about some interesting poetry, and it is also this period of Pride, from the end of May to the end of July, where I talk about LGBT poets. And today's poem is all about maybe self-reflection, I think. I am referring to The Painting of My Life by Zoe Tuck. For those who don't know, Zoe Tuck is an American writer who has been getting their work published since the early 2010s. A lot of it feels abstract. The poem I'm talking about today is hard to decipher. But again, we have to talk about the poems that we understand or that we don't understand, as well as those that we do understand. And they're also part of an art collective. And Zoe is also a trans woman. So I'm highlighting her poetry here today to just, talk about another trans person who exists in the world during this time where things are probably not easy for such people. Don't know too much else about this person. I know they taught and I think they might have run for office based on what I can find online, but not a lot of other information that is recent. But without further ado, let's talk about The Painting of My Life. I will read it, do a little bit of analysis, and move on from there. The Painting of My Life. Begin exiting from a dream in which the rungs of the ladder were breaking under me, and then the dawn. You said you saw my finger twitch, saw me press my pelvis to the archive, but on the other hand you believed that we awaken out of nothing. Grimacing at the emergency's seemingly endless encores, I dreamed, wakefully now, that I was in the studios of Paris in the 1950s, or synchronized swimming, just one of the myriad nereids. Not one of the peoples of the corn, the crust of colonialism has jagged edges. Maybe the way to enter the day would be reading aloud, although no one else is here today besides the dog, limiting the opportunity for unmediated conversation at this time, though, it must be said, she responds in her way and recognizes quite a few English phrases. And many more embodied in olfactory cues. I just want something to ensue, so I went to the painting of my life, given to me by my memories, in which everything that happened is still moving, to plumb the joys of known affinities. And then I went to Facebook, where someone articulates a radical vision, maddening because I know they'll soon be yelling at me. What's radical about that? In terms of analysis, this is quite an interesting poem. One that no matter how many times I've read it so far, I can't quite get a hang on what it truly means. But, that's what this section is for, this analysis period. In terms of narrative, I think it's simply a person talking about their life, or talking about something that happened. They said they awaken out of a dream where something significant happened. They talk about the moment that they're in, where they're like, it'd be great to read, but the only thing around me is the dog, and the dog kind of reacts to what I'm reading, but maybe not in the way that they would prefer. And maybe they're hoping for something great to happen in their life, but they're only finding people yelling at them. And so it's an interesting kind of psychological sort of poem, but also maybe abstract, maybe a little bit surreal, in that it's not really straightforward. You kind of gotta read between the lines, I think it's a poem about someone who doesn't want to be in this current moment. This comes from Zoe's book, Bedroom Vowel, which was published in 2023, and 2023 was only a couple of years ago. Zoe Tuck is trans. Again, maybe this is me kind of sort of assuming something about Zoe's life, but if I had to guess, maybe this poem is is reflecting on the current moment and realizing that it's quite harsh to people who are trans. It's always been harsh to people like Zoe, because the 90s weren't that great, the 2000s weren't that great, the 2010s became better, but once Trump got elected, it got worse, and these kind of moments exist outside of Donald Trump, but it's still a pretty stressful situation. I especially see that near the end of the poem where they say, and then I went to Facebook where someone articulates a radical vision, maddening because I know they'll soon be yelling at me. What's radical about that? And Facebook is, in this current day, is a cesspool of misinformation and anger, especially by, wealthy people or, the uneducated masses who are still using Facebook, even though I'm still using Facebook. But if someone's articulating a radical vision, they're calling for one thing or another on Facebook. And usually it's like, this person shouldn't exist or something like that, or it's wrong to be trans, which you see a lot on Facebook from the older crowd. So maddening because I know they'll soon be yelling at me. What's radical about that? Kind of a very powerful way to end the poem. What's radical about being angry at somebody? There's a lot of people who are angry in the world, and you're not radical for being one of them. You have to have a cause that's worth fighting for, and simply not wanting trans people to exist, or simply not wanting something good to exist in the world, is not radical in and of itself. So I do think that's maybe some aspect of the poem. I also think there's a need for company, which you see in an early verse. The narrator says maybe the way to enter the day would be reading aloud, although no one is here today besides the dog, limiting the opportunity for unmediated conversation, which is a good use of wordplay there. Not wordplay, but just good word usage. It kind of flows. At this time, though, it must be said, she responds in her way and recognizes quite a few English phrases and many more embodied in olfactory cues. Wanting companionship, wanting company so much that you're just like, well, the dog can, sort of respond to what I'm saying, even if it might not be able to understand maybe what you're reading, because sometimes dogs, I don't think they understand various languages. Maybe there is one language that they understand, like German or Esperanto or something, but I don't think one of those languages is English. So I do think there's a need for company, maybe sort of mirrored against the sort of horrible state of the world right now, where trans people are under fire, where there's just a whole lot of protest, a whole lot of hate being thrown at various groups. That's my sort of reading at the poem, but again, it is kind of hard to decipher, and I think you could probably come up with any number of different meanings from Zoe's work. Anyway, those are my thoughts on The Painting of My Life by Zoe Tuck. Pretty interesting poem. Again, I don't completely understand it, but I would be very interested in hearing what your thoughts are on this. So let me know if you have anything to say in the comments below, or if you think I'm not really spot on with my review. I'm willing to accept a little feedback there. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if some more people can find out about Poetry Thursday, or put this poet, or this poem if they don't already know about that. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and self-reflective, world-reflective travels. Farewell.